Oh, you heard something? Oh, you
Okay.
did.
All right.
Okay. Nope. Good. Yes, we have two.
Bonnie's sorry, he's not here.
No.
He knows.
Okay, fabulous. I'm gonna introduce this and what it will be to start
Okay,
instead of the
Perfect.
end.
Yeah.
What would you prefer?
that's great.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so number one, hi, I'm Sepha Kirshblum, for those who I have not yet met. I live in Efrat and I love Tanakh. It's my passion, it's my joy, it's my love. And tonight, what I decided to do in general, the course will be on Sefer Bereishit, going through family dynamics. But in general, I felt like I wanted you to just be able to see the style of how I teach and not have to like each in the Bereishit course, it's a course. We're going to be developing themes. We're going to be able to see a family through years, you know, as I think we're all comfortable with in terms of Sefer Bereishit, of understanding we're literally following generations and everything will build. Every shear will have a message and a takeaway, but it also builds. So what I wanted to do tonight was something not building, but just to get my style, to understand and appreciate the way we're going to learn together. So I decided to veer away from Bereishit just for this week and do something from Bamidbar, but honestly, I think one of not just my favorite stories, but I think the lessons and the takeaway from the story we're going to do tonight is just so powerful, so meaningful. I think it gives us an appreciation of text, of Mamash Pshat, but also Mefarshim and what they bring to the table and how we can apply it in 2024 and please God in 3024. So tonight we're going to be doing the story of Miriam talking about Moshe with Aaron. And I think there's a lot of the parts of the story that are quote, quote, well known, and then there are going to be pieces that we will develop together. So the title will actually develop after, but we'll start with the first source, which is really going to be the source we're going to be running through. We're going to be in Sefer Bamidbar, Perek Yud Bet. So I'm just going to start the main size print. Sorry for the differentiation. Somehow when you save it as PDF, the fonts change. I don't know how or why. But Pasuk Aleph, Vatzidaber Miriam va'Aaron b'Moshe al odot ha'isha kushit asher lakach ki isha kushit lakach. And I'll translate literally, and then obviously we'll spend some time discussing. And Miriam spoke, and Aaron, about Moshe, about the news of his Cushi wife that he married, because he married a Cushi woman, right? So number one, what is Cushi, right? So technically, Pshat, Ethiopian, right? A Cushi is someone from Ethiopia. But what is happening here, right? Number one, the text is always so careful about grammar. So, Vatzidaber Miriam va'Aaron, and Miriam spoke, and Aaron, right? What's it talking about? What's with the grammar mistake here? And what are they talking about, Moshe? Right? It doesn't give me any explanation of what this conversation is. Just it's something about the news of this Cushi woman that he married because he married a Cushi woman. So the question is, did he marry someone just now? Right? Did we miss the wedding? Did we not get an invite? Like that's how I always read it that first time. I'm reading the parak and I'm like, that's so uncomfortable. Like you're the leader of the whole nation. You didn't invite us to your new wedding. This would be a big major event that I would have liked to know about. Right? So maybe this is us getting our post invite, right? It's too expensive, too many people, totally appreciate it. But what's going on here? Right? And then before we even go through the Mefarshim, I just want to jump to Pasuk Bet, which I know is a little bit hard to find, but I'll just guide you down. We're going to go back up, but just to see where Pasuk Bet is, right? Then their conversation continues in the text, and Vayomru, and they say, Harak ach b'Moshe diber Hashem? Wait a second. Does God only speak to Moshe? Halo gambanu diber? Doesn't God also talk to us? Vayishma Hashem, and God listened. And I think this pasuk is where it makes you go back to pasuk Aleph and say, now I'm really lost, right? If we're excited about some wedding that we weren't invited to. Okay. But then the continuation of this conversation is something to do with this idea of nevuah, of prophecy, right? Harak ach b'Moshe diber Hashem. Does God only speak to Moshe? Halo gambanu diber. Doesn't he talk to us too? Right? So clearly there's this disconnect but connect between the news of this marriage for this relationship and this prophecy. Now I know in Efrat this is totally normal, but I'm assuming it's totally normal here too. Okay, cool.
There's a plane.
Ah,
How are you?
that's amazing.
That's amazing. What? That's amazing.
That's amazing. You don't even notice it. My kids, literally, it's like, could we go on a plane that you could hear? No, no, sweethearts, you cannot go on a plane right over a front. Anywho, so we go back to this text and we're saying, what is going on here? What is this conversation? And what's amazing in terms of the Mefarshim, I only brought you Rashi here, but I want us to appreciate, if you were to open up a Chumash, every Perush is on the same page, which is not typical, right? Usually this one has this theory and this one has this idea, and this is their view of Pshat. When it comes to this Isha Kushit that we're going to talk about in a minute, everyone is on the same page, except there's one exception to our rule, which is the Rashbam. The Rashbam, who is Rashi's grandson, who generally only comments if he disagrees with his grandfather, right? So the Rashbam comes in and will say, I actually think it is about a marriage. I actually believe there was a Kushi woman that Moshe married, because if we follow the story of Moshe's life, right, when he left Mitzrayim, when he had to run for his life because he killed the Mitzri and Paro wants him dead, he was only 20 years old, right? He was a kid at that point. Not that 20-year-olds are children, but in a certain way they are, right? And we don't see him again until he's 80 at the Sneh. At the burning bush, he's 80 years old. There are 60 missing years of his life. So Divrei Ayamim alludes to it, which Rashbam literally grabs on. And he says, oh, well, in those 60 years, he ended up in Kush, he ended up in Ethiopia, and became like a king in Ethiopia and had to take a wife, because how could you not have a queen? But he never slept with this wife. So therefore, it was never, consummated. It was never a complete marriage. And that's what they're referring to here. Now, I appreciate that the Rashbam is really holding on to the pshat of Isha Kushit, but it doesn't help us understand the next pasuk at all. So therefore, I find it hard to follow. So we're going to do Rashi. Okay, so right under our first pasuk, we're going to look at the Rashi together. It's a multi-part Rashi, but he's expecting you to just take what he's saying as like almost literally a davar pashut. Everyone knows this because all the other Mefarshim agree. Uminayin hayta yodat Miriam shepiresh Moshe min ha'isha. So Rashi asks the question and says, how does Miriam know that Moshe separated from Tzipporah? Now, how do we know he's separated from Tzipporah? Where is this coming from? What is going on? Exactly. So what does the Rashi continue? Bringing in the Sifri, the Midrash. Rabbi Natan Omer, Miriam hayta b'tzad Tzipporah, b'sha'a shene'emar l'Moshe, Eldad u'Meidad mitnab'im b'machaneh. Right? So Parak Yud Aleph, the parak right before this, is a story of two men, Eldad and Meidad, who get surprised Nevuah. They get a surprise prophecy in the camp. And according to this midrash, it happens to be Miriam is standing next to her sister-in-law, Tzipporah, right, at that moment. Kevan shesham'at Tzipporah, as soon as Tzipporah heard that Eldad and Meidad just got this surprise prophecy, Amra, Tzipporah says, and I always envision it like when we mutter under our breath, like, and if it happens to be someone standing next to me, they can overhear me, but I'm really just venting, right? Not to anyone in particular, but I'm just letting it out. So Tzipporah lets it out. I feel so bad for their wives. If this happens to them so frequently and so surprisingly, their husbands may separate from them, just like my husband separated from me. Umisham yada Miriam v'higita la'Aaron. When Miriam heard that, she ran to go tell Aaron. Right. So now let's go back and understand what was this conversation. Right. What is going on? Right. But to daber Miriam v'Aaron, Miriam has this information that she overheard Tzipporah saying. She brings it to Aaron. right? Al odot ha'isha kushit asher lakach ki isha kushit lakach, right? So according to Rashi in the Midrash, they are talking about Tzipporah, not some random Ethiopian woman, that he is no longer together with his wife Tzipporah, and Miriam runs to go tell Aaron. Now this really begs the question, why? Why does she have to run with this information, right? This is Miriam. This is a leader of the Jewish people. I have a very hard time swallowing that she's like, Aaron, you got to hear the talk. Crazy news, crazy stuff I got to share with you. I don't think that's it. So why is she running?
The second pasuk.
Good. What's the second pasuk?
The second pasuk is the Vayomer Haraket Moshe. So if she conceivably has her own nevuah, she's had nevuah, and Aaron has nevuah as well. So were they doing something that's out of bounds?
Excellent, right? So I think one amazing theory is she's actually questioning, shoot, right? Did we not get the memo, right? Oh my gosh, Aaron, did you separate from your wife? Because I didn't separate from my husband, right? But we also get nevuah. So what's going on, right? So I think personally, I think that's the most legit answer. I agree. I think she is genuinely trying to decipher and understand, maybe we missed a memo. What is happening here, right? And I think there's one other theory that personally I also appreciate a lot, which I brought in the next source, not the Rashi's on Isha Kushit, we'll go back to those, but the Shemot Perek Bet, right? Because what I love about Midrashim in general is they follow, very similar to Rashi's Pshuto Shel Mikra, is they find a personality, they see an element of that personality, and it's almost like they'll find that element everywhere, right? Like if Yaakov is always honest and he is ish tam, right? It can't be that he lied to his father when he dressed up as Esav, right? Anochi kama Esav bechorecha, right? I am me, right? And Esav is your firstborn, right? That's an idea of the concept of pshuto shel mikra, right? So Rashi says if Yaakov's like that, then so Chazal is the same way. What do we know about Miriam? Who is this girl? Right? Who is this woman? What other midrashim have we ever heard about Miriam?
Having her parents get back.
Excellent, perfect, right? Which is the source right below, Shemot Perek Bet, right? Pasuk Aleph, Vayelech ish mi Beit Levi, vayikach et bat Levi, right? The pasuk tells us in the beginning of Perek Bet, there's a man from Levi from the house of Levi that marries the daughter of Levi, right? And the question here is twofold. Number one, what is Vayelech? What does it mean he's going? But number two, Miriam's already born and Aaron's already born because they're older than Moshe. So it's not like this marriage just happened. So what's going on, right? So comes the Midrash.
It's almost diametrically opposed. One is bringing together and the other one is separating.
Excellent. Well, I think they're actually going to be both together, but we'll see in 1 second. At first, I think you're right. At first glance, it's like, oh, is it supposed to be a together thing or is it supposed to be a separate thing? But I think she's actually universal, which we'll see in a second, right? So the first Midrash says, Dorshim Chazal. What does Chazal say in this pasuk? Vayelech ish mi Beit Levi lehichan halach. Right? Its question is on the word vayelech. Where was he going? Right? What does that mean? He went. Amar of Yehuda bar Zvina, shehalach be'itzat bito. He was going after the advice of his daughter, Shazu Miriam, that was Miriam. Amram gadol hador haya, he was one of the leaders of the generation. Kevan she'amar Paro, harasha kol ben hayelod hayaora tashlichuhu, when Paro made the decree that every boy that's born has to be thrown into the river, Amar, he said, Oy, lashuanu amalin, right? We're going to add to this. Amad v'giresha tishto. He separated from his wife because he said, I don't want to bring a baby into this world, into this matzav, into this situation. Amdu kulan v'girshuat nashotehen. Because he was this role model, everyone saw Amram separate from Yocheved and they said, that must be what we're supposed to do. Amra lo bito, right? So now we're going to Miriam, who let's just appreciate is 5. Okay. Now I totally appreciate that 5-year-olds have no filter. I get that. I appreciate that. They say things that, our age people would not necessarily feel as comfortable saying. But this 5-year-old goes to her father and says, Abba, kasheg zeratecha yoter mishel paro. Your rulership, your, rule that you're putting on everyone is worse than Paro. Sheparo lo gazar ella al hazakarim. Paro is only killing the boys. But ata gazrat al hazakarim ve'al nekivot. Right? What you're doing, not being with mommy, means even a girl that's born is now killed because she's not even born. Right? You're preventing even the girls. Amad vehechzir et ishto. He got back together with his wife because of this 5-year-old. Amdu kulan v'hachziro, and it dominoed, and all the men of the Jewish people got back together with their wives. Now, what's so powerful about this midrash, and why do I think it's so connected to our story? Right? I don't think it's polar opposites. I actually don't think she's going to say maybe we're doing something wrong. I think she's questioning Moshe. I think she's going to Aaron and saying, what is he doing? Harak ach b'Moshe diber Hashem halo gam banu. We get nevuah and we didn't separate. This is not okay, what he's doing. And just like the 5-year-old, now she's 86, I appreciate it, but she's saying, we have to fix this. Just like I went and I fixed our parents, we have to fix this, but I'm no longer 5. So I understand that is it so tsanua or appropriate for me to go talk to Moshe about this? Not so much, but who would be the better choice? The big brother, right? Aaron, this one's for you, right? I did the job with our parents because I didn't understand it was inappropriate as a 5-year-old, but now I do. So Aaron, you're his big brother. Listen to what I'm telling you. This is crazy what I heard, right? You have to fix this because who is she according to the Midrash? Someone whose core value is a husband and wife relationship and the intimacy in a marriage. And she's saying, this is a value of mine. This should be a value of us all. And therefore, we need to fix it. You need to fix this, Aaron. So I'm bringing you this information to fix it. Great. So far, I'm liking the pshat. I hope you're liking the pshat. But we still have a question. Why couldn't you call her Tzipora? Right? Why? Why do you have to call her Isha Kushit? She's not. She's not from Ethiopia. She's from Midian, right? That was in the text. So why are you so weird and vague and actually wrong in the text, right? And the
also,
Rashi. Oh, sorry.
Explain the second half of the pasuk. Ki isha kushit laka. Like what is that doing?
Right. Why is it? Number one, why she referred to that, and number two, why addendum it? Right? Why do we have to repeat this over and over, especially if it's not true? Right? So I won't lie, the first time I learned this Rashi, I actually remember being in elementary school learning this Rashi. And I say with as much love as I can to the educational system that I grew up with, I remember belittling him in my mind and being like, that's your answer? Wow. Okay. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, I wonder what Rashi's will interest me. And to me, it's a pedagogical, like, pet peeve that Rashi is so brilliant, but we bring him in, and at least in America, in 4th grade, and we just assume he's 4th graders to appreciate his brilliance, but how can they, right? So together, we're going to see this Rashi and hopefully appreciate it on a much deeper level. Rashi says, first on the first phrase, Ha'isha Kushit, the first time, he says, Magid, it's here to tell us, Shehakol modim biyafya. Everyone knew Tzipora was gorgeous. Everyone acknowledged she was beautiful. Kishem shehakol modim b'shvurato shel Kushi. Just like everyone would agree that someone from Kush is black. Now in English, we call that a simile. But again,
Plain as day.
plain as day.
Plain as day.
Plain as day. So Rashi is pretty much saying it's objective, right? We usually say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, but there are certain humans in every generation that it's not subjective. It's not just in the beholder's eyes they're beautiful. No. They are universally gorgeous, right? They are universally, objectively beautiful. And Rashi says that's what it means when it calls her Isha Kushi. Now, again, the first time you read that, at least personally, that's sweet. It's a nice idea, but I don't get it, right? I don't get what you're trying to tell me. But it's going to go even further when I look at the second Rashi, which, remind me, Joy, was that your name? Yes. Joy's question, right? Why does it repeat it? Right? Second phrase, Ki isha kushit lakach, it repeats the phrase. Ma talmud lomar, what's it here to teach us? Ella yesh lecha isha na'ebiafia. Ve'ina b'ma'aseha. There are girls out there that are beautiful on the outside, but inside, internal, not so beautiful, right? Right? B'ma'aseha, right? Lo biafia. Then there are other girls that are beautiful on the inside, but not as beautiful on the outside. Aval zot, but her, aka Tzipora, na'ebakol. She was beautiful inside and out. And if I had any thoughts on the first Rashi, they were just amplified on the second Rashi. But what I think Rashi is doing here is actually magnificent. Because the real question we have is, why isn't her name in this story? Tzipporah's name is not in the text a single time, right? Which generally, when God leaves something like that out, it's pretty much saying, this is not the ikar of our story. This is not what I want you to focus on. So here, what Rashi is saying is, we're taking even another step further. Because if someone were to hear or learn, Moshe stopped sleeping with his wife, right? Yes, clearly Nevuah is part of it, but forget Nevuah. What would be the number one assumption of the world if he stopped sleeping with his wife? She must not be that beautiful. He must not be attracted to her anymore. So he stopped sleeping with her. So what is Rashi saying? Don't you dare. Don't you dare look at this pasuk or this story and assume, he's not attracted and that's why he's not with her anymore. And then Rashi says, even worse, what could one say? You know, he married her when he was a runaway. He was a nobody. He literally was running for his life and he married this girl. But now he's the leader of the Jewish people. He is literally not just the manhig, but the teacher of Torah to over 2 million people. Maybe she's not on his level anymore. Maybe back in the day, they were a good shidduch, so to speak. But now she doesn't hold a candle to who he is. Rashi says, don't you dare do that either. She is beautiful and she is fabulous. And the reason they are not together has zero to do with any of those hypotheses you could come up with, and everything to do with Moshe's relationship with God, which inherently what Rashi is really saying is, that's why her name's not here. I don't want you to think this story through the eyes of Tzipporah.
But doesn't, once she comes back with Yitro, her name is not mentioned afterwards.
That's true.
She's called, I mean, after it says Yitro comes with Tzipporah, it says Banav Ishto.
Yeah.
So maybe her name is not, I don't know.
It's not mentioned because
Is
she
she
really is
ever
not
mentioned?
part of the story ever
Yeah,
again.
Is she ever back to having a prominent role after?
Which I think is part of the message of this parak, honestly, as we go through the centerfold of the parak. I think Ulai, the answer to that will come up, but I think it highlights that exact point, that she is, I don't even want to say a backstory character. She's not at the forefront of his life anymore. And it's a new chapter for him. Since
Well, it's a question of Moshe and his relationships
in general.
in general.
Yes, 100%, which I think God is going to explain. So let's go there to see what happens, right? So now we understand Miriam and Aaron are clearly talking about the fact that Moshe is no longer with Tzipporah, right? And they are saying somehow it is connected to Nevuah. And how is it connected to Nevuah? So I didn't bring in the source, I apologize for this, but the idea and halacha of prophecy, of getting Nevuah, is you must be in a status of tahara. You must be tahor to get Nevuah. But in practice, all that means is you need to go to the mikveh, right? Yes, when a husband and wife are together, technically the status of both becomes tameh. So you can't bring a carbon and you can't get Nevuah, which is why any cool archaeological dig of the old city, and as you go further, but in Yerushalayim, there are just hundreds of mikvahot because you just went to a mikvah, you changed your status, and you were tahor. Okay. And then we go, just to the last 2 words of Pasuk Bet, Vayishma Hashem. I find those 2 words also so powerful because, especially, after our conversation last week, God hears everything. God's watching everything, right? We believe that 200%. So what does it mean? God heard this. He hears everything, right? And to me, Vayishma Hashem is another validation to Miriam and Aaron. This was not a malicious, Lashon Harahak, right? The only person, so to speak, that heard them talking was God. This was not everyone here, the big news gossip we want to share. No, this was a personal, private conversation that only God heard. And then we have Pasuk Gimel, right? V'ha'ish Moshe anav ma'od. Moshe was the most humble human being, mikol ha'adam asher al panei adama, more than any other human on this world. What a weird placement. Thanks. Thanks for that heads up. Why do I need to know that now?
Well, because we may be saying Moshe did something inappropriate with his wife.
But
and
what does
that-
humility have to do with that? I would say he is
Because
the
it-
greatest
You
Eved Hashem.
can't ever say he did it because he's too great. It wasn't that he thought he was
Ah.
so great, which is what we just brought up.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have not seen that answer anywhere, but I love it.
There you go.
Remind me your name. I'm so sorry. When I say remind me, I didn't know.
Yeah, we never.
Yeah.
Micha, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. But I think that's such a gorgeous shot, right? It's highlighting that he didn't do it because he thinks he's holier than thou. There was clearly legitimacy to what he did. Perfect. I love that. But there are a few answers out there that the Mefarshim bring in. I don't know why no one sent that. I didn't read that one. Ramban says, and I appreciate it because of its chachma. Ramban says, right, what I think we've learned since, we were much younger, when you do tshuva for any fate, right? If let's say I ate a cheeseburger, to do tshuva for a mitzvah being adam lamakom, vidoing, right? I'm sorry, God, I ate a cheeseburger, huge mistake, won't do it again, right? Okay, great. But let's say I stole from Fagi. But let's say I stole something from Fagi, right? Does this work? No. We believe for a bin adam lachavero mitzvah, an interpersonal mitzvah, Hashem says, don't come knocking on my door until you've knocked on Fagi's door, right? Once Fagi forgives you, then you come knock on my door, right? So what does Ramban say? That he's an anav, right? Which it's going to build. The Ramban will build over the psukim that Moshe is an anav, so he's never going to fight this fight. God has to fight the fight for him, but he's going to involve him every step of the way so that they can ask Moshe for forgiveness. He's going to be involved through the entire scene. And personally, why I think Pasuk Gimel is there is again to highlight he's the greatest anav that ever lived. So did he explain to anyone, even his siblings, that he is in a different playing field in his relationship with God than they are? No, they have no idea because he's so humble. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't let them know that he is literally lo kam kamoshe od, right? There is no one like Moshe, right? So God is going to explain that to us. Pasuk Daled, Vayomer Hashem pitom el Moshe ve'el Aaron ve'el Miriam. And Hashem suddenly appears to all three of them, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, and he says, Se'u shloshatchem el Olam Moed. I want the three of you now at the Olam Moed. Vayetzu shloshatam. So the three of them, exactly. I think of literally lahavdil, right? When I hear my mother's voice, it still can come back. Hearing my mother's voice from upstairs, Sepha, get in here, right? Literally, like I can bring up the nausea of fear in that moment. Kal v'chomer, can you imagine God being like, I want you meeting me at the Olam Moed right now, right? I imagine Miriam and Aaron are just freaking out, right? I imagine Moshe is probably just confused, right? Oh, he sounds so angry. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so he heads out too.
But also, the pasuk bet comes back into play because Miriam and Aaron obviously are not in this state of.
Excellent, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. Perfect. The pitom, the suddenly, exactly. And it will be even more highlighted or taken to the next level when we see Pasuk Hey, Vayered Hashem ba'amud anan, God comes down in this vision of a cloud, Vayamod petach ha'oel, and he stands in front of the oel, Vayikra Aaron and Miriam, Vayitzu shneihem. And once all three get there, then he's like, actually Moshe, I don't really want to talk to you. I just need to talk to them, right? So which is why the Mefarshim are like, but why'd you invite him? Right, that's so mean, right? You send out this mass invite and then he shows up and he's like, no, I don't need to talk to you, just wait on the side, right? Which is exactly, I'm so sorry. What was your name?
Mark.
Mark. So exactly as Mark highlighted, right, that Rashi says, highlighting the two issues on the word pitom suddenly, and this idea of why invite Moshe if you didn't really need to talk to him, right? Hashem says, I want you to see the difference. Because when I come to you suddenly, what did Miriam and Aaron have to do? They had to run to the mikveh. They were like, oh, we need 20 minutes. So sorry. We'll meet you there as soon as we can. But this is God, right? How uncomfortable to tell God, I'll be there in 20, right? But what did they watch? At the same moment they're running to the mikveh, Moshe can go immediately. That he was there just to show the modeling example. This is what my life is like. And I don't have to run.
But
Doesn't,
doesn't Hashem want us to be?
Excellent. Don't worry, we're gonna get there.
but it doesn't say that.
Wait, let her
It
finish her
says-
question.
Doesn't.
Oh,
Hashem want
sorry.
us to-
Oh, so
Right,
sorry.
That is my question.
I mean, I assume it, but
Yeah,
you can
doesn't
finish it for everyone
Hashem
else.
want us to be human beings and have
Marital
that-
relations, 100%. I agree.
and
We're
have a
gonna get there.
normal life and have?
Yes, yes, and
He
yes.
doesn't want us to be.
Yes, agreed. We're gonna get there. But for them right now, God just wants to see the contrast.
Yeah, but
Moshe
it doesn't say
and you
that.
two.
It says, "Zu shlosh-techem." They all left together.
Yes, they all come out, but meaning Rashi is quoting two things. One, he's bringing Chazal, saying that they scream Mayim Mayim, that they need the mikveh,
Mhm.
but he's highlighting, why does it have to say Pitom? Why does Hashem have to suddenly appear to them? It's weird. And why was Moshe invited if he is not going to hear the speech God is going to give? So that's what he answers there. And Ramban, I guess, would be similar to your idea. Ramban is what we just highlighted, just building on it. Moshe has to be there because the minute the conversation is over, what does he want Miriam and Aaron to be able to do? Ask Moshe for forgiveness. If he's standing there, he can forgive instantly. And once Moshe forgives instantly, then God can forgive. So he wants everyone there for the immediate chain reaction.
So do we assume that Aaron and Miriam connected this to the whole story of Ishak Kushi?
They will in a minute when God is explicit. So they might have started to, and now God is gonna totally ream into them, right? So he is now talking just to Aaron and Miriam, Pasuk Vav, Vayomer, and he says, Shim'u nadvarai, listen to what I'm about to tell you, right? It's just such a strong tone, right? God is clearly really angry at the two of them. And he says, Im yihyeh neviachem b'mar'eh lavet vada, b'chalom adaber bo. If I, God, choose to give someone nevuah, they get it in a mar'eh, in a vision, b'chalom, in some sort of dream. Pasuk Zion, lo kain avdi Moshe. That is not true for my servant Moshe. Bechol beiti ne'emanhu, in my entire house, right? What's God's house? The whole world, right? And in the whole world, I trust him. Right, so number one, that's gorgeous in and of itself. But the Ibn Ezra, right under it, is so stunning. What does he say? The whole Beitin Amanhu, what does God mean when he says that? Ta'amo kiben bayit. It's like a ben bayit, right? And I think Baruch Hashem, we all fully understand what that means, right? The idea that whether it's our kid's best friend or our kid at their best friend's house, or just someone who doesn't have family in Israel that literally just attached themselves to us, right? The family that's not related person, right? And what does it mean for someone to be a Ben Bayit? Someone who's a Ben Bayit doesn't wait for an invitation. They walk in, right? They invite themselves over for Shabbos lunch, or they walk into your kitchen. They don't ask you for a drink. They know exactly where the cups are. They know exactly where you keep everything. And at least growing up, I had one friend that would actually tell my family, you know, you're low on, this particular cookie, right? You always have the Stelladora and I can't find it in the cabinet, right? For those of us who remember Stelladora, right? So that is what a Ben Bayit is. What does that mean when God is calling Moshe a Ben Bayit? Because this is really the difference. Every other prophet Hashem goes to. What is he saying about Moshe? Moshe can walk right in. He doesn't need me to start the conversation. My door is open. And Moshe just walks right in to initiate a conversation with me. Right? Wow. What a vision. Right? What a level. right? And now he takes it to the next level. Pasuk chet, peh el peh adaber bo, mouth to mouth I speak to Moshe. Umareh lo b'chidot. The vision for him is not in riddles. Utmunat Hashem yabit. The vision of God is clear. Umadua lo yaretem ledaber ba'avdi b'Moshe. How could you not have been scared to talk about my servant, my Moshe? Right? And what a love, right? How dare you talk about him? How dare you think it's okay? Right? But now we have to go back to that phrase, peh el peh al daber bo. Because what's interesting is in two other times in Chumash, God describes his relationship with Moshe similar but different. Right? What's the typical phrase of how God talks to Moshe? Panim el panim, face to face, right? Which is similar to the Ben Bayit, right? It's a conversation, right? The first difference of Moshe is it's dialogue. Most people get nevuah, that God gives them a message and they have to decipher. Moshe, dialogue, right? But here, it's not panim el panim. Hell, peh. It's very different, right? Mouth to mouth. I don't have the same visual as I have panim el panim, right? Panim el panim, it looks like two people talking. I know in 2024, you hear mouth to mouth and you think CPR, right? But if we go pre-CPR, you hear the phrase mouth to mouth, and it's a vision of intimacy. It's a vision of two people together. And what I want to try to tap into on whatever level we can is exactly your question. What was your name?
Robin.
Robin, right? As Robin asked, don't we want intimacy in Judaism? We believe halachically in that concept of intimacy. We don't believe in abstinence and priesthood in that way. So what is this talking about? And at least for me, I always think of the idea of Shema, right? The first paragraph of Shema, va'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, right? That we have to love God, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol modecha, right? With everything we have, with everything we are. But then the rest of the paragraph, v'shinantam levanecha, you should talk about it with your kids, right? V'lechtacha v'derech, it should be something you think about when you're walking down the street, v'shachvacha, when you're lying down, v'kumecha, and you get up in the morning, right? The last thing you think about before you go to sleep, the first thing you think about in the morning, right? What is v'ahavta describing? Romance, right? A crush. The concept of what we would describe as love of a man and a woman, right? Everything I think of reminds me of them. They're the last person I think about before I go to sleep. The first thing I think about in the morning. I want to tell my kids about how we met and what our love story is, etc. Right? And Hashem is saying, no, that the goal is to feel that with me. But I understand humanity. So humans need a human example so that you can transfer that to me, right? Which in general, so many mitzvot, he gives us the tools with other humans to be able to transfer. What's unique about Moshe? And I think literally just Moshe, right? What happened to him on Har Sinai? What were those 40 days and 40 nights like? Right, I always think about it. Is there a porta potty up there? No, I mean, I get that I'm female. I get it's different, but there was no bathroom up there. And it doesn't say he was there for 40 days, right? Because if I say the phrase 40 days to us, it also infers the nights. But as a human, what do I need to do at night? Sleep. And it doesn't discuss if there was a meal plan up there, right? For 40 days and 40 nights that Moshe was on Har Sinai, he was no longer human. He didn't have human needs like we have them, to the extent, right? What's that myth about Jews and why we have to wear a kippah? You think about ancient art.
Horns.
We had horns, right? The old pictures is that somehow only the males. The males had horns and had to wear a kippah to cover it so that we wouldn't scare people away. Where does that myth come from? It's actually in the
Karen
text.
Zanav.
The Karen or coming out of his face, because there was something angelic about him after Har Sinai. And when I say there's something angelic, I think he mamash shifted. I think he's no longer the human like we are, without the same human needs. And I think one of those needs of intimacy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, he's filling it with me. Peh al peh al daber bo. I want you to have that intimate vision, because I don't think he has any need for the human needs anymore. Va'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. He has transferred them and totally gets it with me. And I think this parak is so significant because I don't think it's a message that we should be taking in. I don't think any of us will ever get to that level. And therefore it's not goals. I don't see this as hashtag goals of where our life should be. But I think he's just explaining to Miriam and Aaron, don't look at Moshe like anybody else. He's not like anybody else. The whole Beitin and Manhu, he's different. He is a different human that we're not aspiring for that element of. But what I do appreciate that Hashem is saying, how did you not see he was different? How could you not see in him that he's not the same as everybody else? How couldn't you be scared to talk about him? He should have been petrified. He's my baby, so to speak. And this is who you're going to talk about? Right? And then, Pasuk Yud, Vayichar af Hashem bam vayilech. God is livid and he leaves. Right? And I love that line because I love the Rashi there. Right? What does Rashi say on the back? Me'achar shehudiyam sarchonam gazar alehem niduay. Only after he tells them what they did wrong, then he actually gets angry. Kal v'chomer lebasar v'dam. How much more so for humans? Shelo yichos al chaviru ad sheyudiyanu sarchono. And I think, at least for me, such an important musar, because at least I can throw myself under the bus, but I actually think it's many in our gender package of passive aggressive, right? I'm annoyed, but I'm actually not ready to talk about it. So I'm just going to be passive aggressive about it and let you know I'm annoyed in a backhanded way. Even when you ask me about it, I'm just going to say I'm fine because I don't know what my tipping point is, but I'll get to the tipping point when I finally let you know. But until then, I will just show it in another way. And Hashem is saying, just acknowledge that you're mad. Just say it. And what's so powerful is, does God stay for the conversation? Does God stay to say, let me hear your explanation. Let me hear your defense. No. Vayelech. He leaves. Right? Such important musar. It's not that I have to have the conversation right away. I don't have to have it out now. We don't have to discuss it. I may not be ready, but I need you to at least hear me in a mature way say, I'm annoyed about X, Y, and Z. When I'm ready to talk about it, I'll let you know. It's not right now, but at least you know I'm annoyed. And Pasuk Yud Aleph, v'ha'anan sar me'al ha'oel, the anan, the cloud leaves, right? This visual of God leaving. V'hinei Miriam mitzorat kashalek. Miriam is covered in sarat. Vayifen Aaron el Miriam. Aaron turns to Miriam, v'hinei mitzorat, and he says, oh my God, she's covered in sarat. Right? So the first question that most people ask in this is, where's his punishment? Right? I don't get it. I thought Lashon Hara, we've always learned, is, it takes two to tango. Whoever's listening, whoever is part of it, right? So part of me always wonders, Ulai Do'oraita, that's not the truth. Ulai Do'oraita, it's different. The initiator is more to blame. But personally, I actually think his punishment is going to become very clear in the next two psukim. Right? So he turns around, he sees she's a Mitzorah. Pasuk Yud, Vayomer Aaron el Moshe. This point, Aaron turns to Moshe and he says, Bi Adoni, please, my master, Al na tashed aleinu chatat, asher noalnu va'asher chatanu, right? We quote this in our slichot, right? Please, my master, don't hold this sin against us. We messed up. We're sorry. Really doing vidu, really doing tshuva to Moshe. And then he says, Pasuk Yud Gimel, Al natihi kamei, don't let her be like a dead person. Asher b'tzitome rachamimo, we came out of the same womb. But yachal chatzi b'saro, it's already consuming half her flesh. Right? Meaning you read these psukim and you're just so overwhelmed with his anxiousness, with his overwhelmness. And you have to take a step back and you say, wait a second. We learned about Tzarat. There's a system for Tzarat, right? In a certain way, I always see Tzarat as like a version of strep, right? You, all of a sudden, I speak Lashon Hara about someone, I'm covered with these white blisters, right? Or something's hurting me and I have to go to the doctor, right? To check it out, right? I can't self-diagnose. I wish I can just get, antibiotics without, the hapnaya, but okay, fine. It is what it is. But this is not a physical disease. So I don't need a physical doctor. I need a spiritual doctor, right? So where do I go if I have Tzarat, who's the spiritual doctor of every generation? The Kohen Gadol, I go to him. He's like my doctor. He declares it Tzarat. Once he declares it Tzarat, where do I go? Chutz lamachana for 7 days, and then I come back. He checks if it's getting better. If it's getting better, I go to the mikvah and I go home. If it's not, I have to do round 2. this is not a big deal, right? To me, I know it sounds terrible, but that's, if my kid is not feeling well, it's always like, please let it be strep.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, please let it not be a virus, right? That's the worst thing to hear, because then I don't know how long that's gonna last, right? I don't know how many days he's gonna be homesick, how many days I have to take off work, et cetera, but strep. Oh, I love bacterial, right? Then I get the drugs. Within 24 hours, my kid is usually already fever-free and everything is getting better. To me, tzaraat, it's fixable. It actually gets an antibiotic. There's a cure. It's timed. 7 days, you get to go home. Why is he freaking out? Right? What is the big deal, Laura? Take a breather. Just deal with it. Why can't he deal with it? Right? Because the halacha is the Kohen Gadol, when we say he has to declare it, the Hebrew word would be laha'id, sorry, right? He's an aid. What's Aaron's problem? He's your brother. Asher b'tzeito merechem imo. Says, oh my God, she's one of the Sheva Krovim. What am I going to do? Right? There's only 7 people in this world that I can't be a witness for.
Any Kohen that does that, has to be the Kohen, right?
I believe later it switched into Stam Kohen, but at this
Okay.
point they held by Kohen Gadol. But that's why I think Aaron, I relate to him in this moment so strongly from that perspective of what's his punishment? To feel so helpless, to know in theory you were the one person that should be able to help her. You can't. And therefore he turns to Moshe. I mean, from a doctor perspective, right? From the healing perspective, but also from the halachic perspective. Moshe, what should I do? Right? And vayachel chatzi b'saro, meaning this shouldn't be a big deal, but similar to strep, if untreated, it is a problem, right? This is a real illness. And he's saying, I don't know what happens to tzaraat if untreated. I don't know what happens if she doesn't go, it's already spreading, right? I'm not used to this. What do I do? Right? So what does Moshe do? Pasuk Yudalid, Vayitzak Moshe Hashem. Moshe cries out to God saying, Kelna Rafan Allah, please Hashem, please heal her. Pasuk Tetvav, so powerful. Vayomer Hashem El Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, Va'aviha yarok yarak b'faneha, halo tikalem shivat yamim. If her father spit in her face, she wouldn't be embarrassed for a week. Tisager shivat yamim michutz lamachane. You send her out of that machane. V'achar ta'asef, and then she can come back. Right? Meaning, does Hashem says, you're right, all's forgiven. I'm over it.
But it's a weird punishment.
It's a very weird punishment, but it's
because they have, right, we first learned that this is a threesome. Only 2 people know about the Lashon Hara. Hashem brings them in. It's Moshe, Aaron, and now it becomes a very public thing.
yes, it does.
So this whole idea of this intimate relationship between siblings, between them on the top, now has become
Communal.
communal.
Excellent. So I always wondered,
What does it
honestly,
remind you of?
remind me of
Yeah.
when sibling
Not
relationship becomes.
necessarily siblings, when a relationship becomes a matter of public shaming.
So
Of what? Sorry.
Sota.
But that we have no example of. Meaning that in theory,
Description.
yes,
What
yes, of
could
what
be.
could be, of what. I think for
And
me,
there's
I
something in
wonder.
Sota also referring to them waiting for Miriam's time to end.
Yes, oh, we're gonna get to the whole nation waiting for her. Yes,
Yeah.
it's definitely public. So at least for me, that was one of the things I always searched the Mefarshim and I never found the answer. I always wondered, do the people know what she said? Or they just know she got Torah, right? Like, was it sanua enough that, yes, she's being punished, something went wrong, but you don't need to know. Which at least for me, the only legitimacy to that is otherwise more people would be speaking Lashon Hara and more people would have ended up.
Well,
in Kirshblum.
the only way to find out is if Moshe Aaron said it. They
Right,
learned their lesson by being punished right now.
yes, so meaning I think it was kept
Safe
under
to
wraps.
say.
But
I
it's
think it
not
was
about the Lashon Hara, it's about
embarrassment.
the embarrassment, but also the subject matter of intimacy, which is supposed to be intimate.
Yes,
And the first time around, there's also like a difference. There's like, that was then, this is now. So Miriam is somebody who's always kind of obsessed with whether or not people are sleeping together. So with her parents, she was brought out this hoot, that because of her actions, she created the togetherness of, and it was a survival, that they were also separating because of the hierarchy of needs at that time. In this case, she was out of line. That's the message. In this
Perfect.
case, she was out of line.
Perfect, which I think is so spot on, and I think exactly what God is saying, right? What an interesting description of God's emotions. If her father spit in her face, she wouldn't be embarrassed.
So that was also very shaming. That's what reminded me kind of of Sota.
Yes, exactly. It's, to me, it's also,
Reminded me more of Yibo, the spitting.
Yeah.
Oh, and
really
Chalitza.
too. Yeah, all those
Interesting.
lovely rituals.
It's interesting that like Aaron is freaking out because he's the doctor who doesn't have his doctor's kit. He gets into, but Moshe and Yudalid right away. It's not that he's to
He's
do
also
something.
right.
Yashar Lakadosh Baruch Hu,
Right.
Yitzhak Moshe El Hashem. That's his that's it.
highlighting the
The
difference.
different video. This is
Yes.
the difference. This is
Right, this
This
is
is exactly
who
it.
they are, exactly, to their, Aaron has a job, he has a tafkid. It's very practical, right? Moshe's
it's
job
ruchani. It's
is,
different.
is all that direct line, sorry.
God's anger here is so fascinating, really, because, I mean, Miriam was upset because she overheard Zipporah being upset about, Eldad and Medad.
Yep, mhm.
You know, their wives, and like she's putting herself in the category of, you know, I'm also a prophet's wife, and I'm empathizing with these two prophets. And she hears this and she turns it into a whole story of separating from your partner. And God is tremendously upset about that. And his point is, how do you put him in the same category? Like he's so special, and you've got no right to talk about his private life. And he's also talking as though he's threatened as Moshe's primary love object.
Yes, exactly, exactly. I think whenever I think of it from that perspective, especially from the first part, I always think of the Mishnah in Avot, Al tadin et chavercha ad shetagia limkomo, right? You can't judge someone until you're standing in their space. And the real Mishnah is saying, you're never standing in someone's space. You will never understand someone else's situation. So why do you think you can understand it? How could you understand you can't? Right, which I think exactly is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so angry. Why do you think you can understand what's going on? So why do you think you should talk about it? Right, which is exactly what he says. But inherently, he does also answer the tefillah, right? Because what is Hashem acting as? He's declaring her. He's the Kohen, right? He's saying, okay, she is a Matzorah. Go put her chutz lamachna. I'm giving you that power, so to speak. And then v'achar te'asef. She doesn't have to go through the process again. Zeh. She finishes the 7 days, she can come back, right? Pasuk Ted Zayin v'tisager Miriam chutz lamachna shiva yamin. So Miriam follows through for her 7 days. V'ha'am lo nasa ad ha'asef Miriam. And the nation does not travel until Miriam comes back, right? And again, you first glance at the pasuk, it's like, wow, that's so sweet, right? The nation is giving kavod, 2 million people are giving kavod to this woman, but the reality is, we didn't get to choose when we moved, right? We were not in charge of the goings and the comings. We were on God's command. When God told us we were moving, we were moving. If God told us we were camping, right? In Perek Tet, it says that over and over, 3 times in a row. We followed exactly what God did, which means when it says V'ham lo nasa, it's not the it's Hashem, right? Which is why the Midrash comes in here, V'ha'am lo nasa, which is so stunning. And to me, the whole point of this parak, which we're going to get to in a minute, even though it's already, I have 4 minutes left, but I'm going to do it in 4 minutes. We're going to get there. V'ha'am lo nasa, zeh ha'kavod chalak la hamakom. This is the honor God is giving her. B'shvil sha'a achat shene'akva l'Moshe kishehu shlach lior. Because when she was 6 years old, she waited for an hour by the river to check what would happen to her baby brother. I just want to highlight the 5-year-old who had no filter, right, is now a 6-year-old. And oldest children, right, we all have our stereotypes of the oldest child, whether we are the oldest or we have an oldest. To me, it's a no-brainer that a 6-year-old oldest would check to make sure her baby brother is okay. But what is Hashem saying? I don't care if it was a no-brainer. 80 years later, 2 million people will wait a week out of kavod for what she did for her little baby brother when she was 6, right? Wow. Wow. Which brings me to our last source. At the end of Tefillah, at the end of Shachri in your Siddur, whatever nusach you have, whatever you have, there's something called Tosafot or Hosafot, or every siddur has a different name for it. But there's a few things that are after Barchi Nafshi, after Shir Shal Yom, etc. Before you are what we refer to as the Sheish Zechirot. That is in every siddur at the end of Shachri. Sheish Zechirot are 6 times and only 6 times in Chumash, where Hashem, I'm giving you a mitzvah to remember X every day of your life. Okay, so these are the 6 days of our lives. Number 1, Laman Tizkor Yom Teitzcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Kol Yemei Chayecha. Right, so I have a mitzvah to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim every day, and I think that would make sense. Right, Yetziat Mitzrayim makes sense to me. It's when we became a nation. Right, this was the big exodus. This is what made us who we are. Great. Number 2. רק ישמר לך ושמור נפשך מאוד פן תשכח את הדברים אשר ראו עיניך ופן יסרו מלבביך כל ימי חייך והודעתם לבניך ולבני בניך יום אשר עמדת לפני השם אלוקיך בחורף. Har Sinai. To me, that should have been number 1, but there really is no order. So I get it. Matan Torah, the fact that we got the Torah at Har Sinai together, I get it. I should remember that on a daily. Great. Number 3, Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek b'derech b'tzeischa miMitzrayim. Right, we need to remember Amalek. Now, honestly, before last year, this one was a little bit harder, but I think now we're good. I don't think I need to go into that. I need to remember Amalek. Never forget. Great. Zachor al tishkach et asher hiktzavta et Hashem Elokecha b'Miriam. I'm sorry, Elokecha b'Midbar. I skipped one. Right, don't forget what happened to us in the Midbar. That's actually a weird allusion to Chet HaEgel. Right, Hashem is saying Chet HaEgel was 3 months after Matan Torah. This is how quickly you can fall. Never think you were that secure. Never feel like you're that spiritual. This is what can happen. Great, I should remember that every day. I'll jump to number 6 for a second. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho. Great. Also, Shabbos makes complete sense to me. It's my belief that God created the world in 7 days. Otherwise, I would never be keeping Shabbos. So, Briat HaOlam, I'm with you. But then number 5. Zachor et asher asa Hashem Elokecha leMiriam b'derech b'tzeischa miMitzrayim. Remember what God did to Miriam, which all the Mefarshim say is this parak. Remember this parak every day of your life. Number 1, it is the only of the 6 that's not national, right? Every other event that I'm remembering is a national event that I totally understand and appreciate why I need to remember. I need to remember that Miriam spoke about Moshe, got Tzara. That's awkward.
Unless it's alluding to
Yeah, the way.
hate and tshuva.
Excellent. So many look at it as this is a story of Schar Nonesh, right? A perfect story of Schar Nonesh because you have both, right? This parak is so powerful because it opens with what we are, or at least the way we translated it tonight, not a malicious lashon hara, not an egregious sin, really someone trying to do what's right in their mind, right? And Hashem says, I don't care about your intentions. You get punished like everybody else. You still have tzara and you have to go chutz lamacha. And then the parak ends, right? In a whopping only 15 verses, same chapter. God says that same woman 80 years ago did something spectacular and I'm going to pay her back. Right? What goes around comes around in a great way too. So mitzidi, I agree. I think it's definitely Schar B'Onesh. But I want to go back to the title of this year, as at least for me, I think this is taking it just one step further. Right? The Mishnah in Avot says, "Havei zahir b'mitzvah kala kevachamura, she'ein ata yodea matan scharan shel mitzvot." You should be just as careful with an easy mitzvah as you are with a hard one, because we don't understand how God works, so to speak. Right. And I always think of like, it's so interesting to me that modern Orthodoxy has decided like the big ones, right? Like Shabbos, Kashrut, those are the big ones. And then everything else, you know, is different. What the Mishnah is saying is there is no big one. We don't know how God pays back, right? With the famous example of Shiluach HaKain, right? If you see a nest with eggs, right? You just need to shoo away the mommy bird, which not just, but okay, 2 minutes of your life, and then you can take the eggs, and what's the reward? Arichot yamin, a long life, right? The only other mitzvah in all of Chumash that God tells you the reward, we get a lot of lists of punishments, we know a lot of punishments, but rewards we don't. The only other mitzvah that we get the reward is keep it up at aim. which we should be blessed. I may have Esrim Shana, but it's not an easy one. And these two are the same. Hevi Zahir b'mitzvah kalach kevachamura. What these Sheish Zechirot are highlighting specifically, Miriam, is number one, nothing is too little. Don't belittle any Maaseh Tov that we are doing in this time. We don't know how God is weighing it. Take it seriously, take it passionately, embrace it. And personally, it's my personal motivation to say the 6 things every day, because it's not easy to remember those things. I always feel like I was good enough that I daven shachrit, go me. But it might take an extra 120 seconds to go to this page and read this page, but we have no idea. The Matan Scharan and Be'ezrat Hashem, all of our mitzvot should bring the ultimate geula with the Matan Scharan. Sorry, a little overtime. 3 minutes.
Can I ask one other question?